Namaste everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is Kushalmehra. So the preliminary report involving the accident of Air India's B787 for flight AI-172 that had crashed on 12th June 2025 is out. I want to repeat again, this is a preliminary report. It is not the final report. It's a 15-page report. It is publicly available. If you've not read it, I would say everybody should go and read it. You just have to do a regular Google search. It's available. But it has led to a lot of discussion, a lot of controversy, and today we'll talk about it. We have Sanjay and Abhijit both with us. Um, so Sanjay has written extensively about this in the mainstream media. Abhijit has also been talking about this. I'll start with Sanjay. Sanjay, you have raised in bullet points. I think, if I remember correctly, 12 bullet points about. Yeah,
Yeah.
you've said this raises more questions than answers. Anything?
Yes, actually, yeah. So the preliminary report that came out, couple of things before we start, Kushal and Abhijit, greetings to everybody on the show. Uh, I had tweeted last Monday, and some other journalists also had, that the report is finalized and sent to the ministry. And then suddenly there was a, huge furor online, and then there were denials that we received the report. People have forgotten this, but I'm just reminding you that no, abhi tak report hua nahi, diya nahi. What happened was I found out that the NTSB and the FAA teams and Boeing teams left on Monday night, Tuesday morning for the US. Tuesday morning, our time, Tuesday night, our time, John Ostrover, who is a very noted aviation geek and reporter, who also runs what is called the Air Channel. It's an online magazine. Tweeted about and wrote about the engine fuel switch is being the focus of the investigator, and everybody said, "How can he? It's 2 days. It's not released. The report is not out, and stuff like that." 2 days after that, Wall Street Journal says the same thing, but also adds that there was a disagreement between NTSB and AAIB reporters, officers, and NTSB threatened to leave and walk away. 1.5 days later, the government of India's AAIB releases the report. Now, I'm just placing this there for a significance so people understand the timelines. Now we come to the report. The first thing and objection that I have is on the integrity of the report. However well it's written, however badly it's written, is that the significance of the central part of the report was already roaming around with John Ostrover and the Wall Street Journal 3-4 days prior to its release. So obviously somebody had leaked a lot of stuff, which was significantly important to big corporates in the US, Boeing and GE. That's one part of this. The second part, when we look at the report itself, number one, there is no, the CVR has been very selectively extracted, one line only. Now, the CVR is a cockpit voice recorder. It's part of the EAFR, the black box, so to speak. There are two in this aircraft, one in the front section, one in the tail section, and both have two parts, the DFDR and the CVR. The CVR records everything from the time, the flight commences right till the end of the flight, and it records in spool. So it keeps recording and repeating. Now, over here, what's very important is there were 34 odd seconds. Now, suddenly they just take out one line. They don't give us the timing of which, when that line was stated. One pilot asking, "Did you cut off?" The other guy said, "No, I did not do so." And they don't give any context to that. That's a very serious flaw because it doesn't tell us what happened. They also then say it took 10 seconds for the engines to, the switch to be put on and the engines to spool back on. It doesn't take 10 seconds. So what happened in the 10 seconds gap? The other very significant point I want to point out is it was Diwali in the cockpit, and that should have been put in the report. When I say Diwali, to give your viewers and listeners a perspective, there must have been at least 20 alarms on. You would have had a master warning chime light saying fuel control switch off before that conversation between the cockpit, the two pilots. Remember that. The moment it goes off, there is a master warning light on both the panels and in the center panel, and it'll go mad. You'll hear wah, wah, wah. It's like when you don't put a seatbelt on in the car. You hear that little beep, beep, beep. You would have heard huge warnings. Then you engine fail, thrust loss. You would have the engine fail warning coming on, the air pressure low. I mean, I can list out 30, 40 oral and visual warnings that would have been recorded on the CVR and the DFDR, which they've not even spoken about. And I'm not saying this is the final report, but even in the preliminary report, to back up what you're saying, that one pilot said to the other and that the switches were put off, the least you should have done was recognize all these things. And that's the tragedy here, that they've not done such a thing, and other than that, there's a significant amount of data that has not been shared. Uh, the timestamp on the video, the closed circuit TV camera of the airport has no timestamp, so we don't know. There were people in the US, like I said, who already had it. And the last point is, why give a clean sheet to Boeing and GE unless there is something that you know that you're hiding from us, you and the NTSB. So there's without the completion of the investigation, there was really no need to do this, because we know the takeoff profile was correct, the temperature was right, the aircraft took off properly. Suddenly this happened, and there has to be some deeper question. If you want to say pilot suicide or you want to say intentional pilot action, by all means go for it, but make sure you back it up with enough of data. And there is data available with you which you're not releasing. So it gives a very murky view, and that's what has troubled me no end.
Vijit?
So, I'm gonna. This is a classic case of how not to write a report. Uh, the first 10 pages are absolute gobbledygook, unnecessary, whatever. They're procedural crap. For your actual part of the report to be effectively 1.5 pages, essentially the core part is 2 paragraphs. And for such sweeping, generalizations to be made out there is not a good thing. Now, the problem in all of this is the two lines, the line saying the switches transitioned. What do you mean switches transitioned? There would be the electrical data showing ki kya kab hua, and on what basis you made that finding. When a pilot asks another pilot, why did you turn it off? There is a tonality to it, not put in. Basically, this report seems to have been written to absolve anyone, be it the pilot, be it Boeing, or in this particular case, Honeywell. Now, I'm sending you something, Kushal. I want you to bring these up sequentially on the screen. ठीक है, WhatsApp पे भेजा है.
Okay. Let me put it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Putting it up on the screen right now. Just give me a moment, because
Yeah.
even Sanjay has sent me some stuff on WhatsApp, but I'll share this first. Okay. This is image number 1 that you've shared.
Okay. So this is the fuel control switch of the 787. And you can see it. Let me just, yeah.
I can
Those are the
zoom it.
two knobs marked in red there. Yeah. And above are the thrust, this thing. One second.
Throttle lever.
Now, yeah. So above the white ivory thing is where you increase thrust. Below the two knobs that you see there, they're the fuel control switches. Okay. Now, can you see the two V-shaped, inverted V-shaped things protecting it? That is so that it accidentally doesn't touch either of those two switches. Next image.
Okay. This is the next one you've sent me.
Yeah. Now see the wording of the report. The aircraft achieved the maximum recorded airspeed of 180 knots IAS at about 808.42 UTC, and immediately thereafter, the engine 1 and engine 2 fuel cutoff switches transitioned from run to cutoff position one after another with a time gap of about 1 second. Now, there's an issue with this particular wording, and we'll get to that. Next image. You see this thing like a tooth, two teeth on either side of the switch. This is the fail-safe, yeah. This basically prevents, so it's not like a fuse box switch. The software can't just turn it off and on. Okay, it's not like the fuse going off. You know, when the in summer when your air conditioner overloads, the switch in the fuse box is go cut, and then you have to go switch it on again. It can't happen out here. Next image. This is the close up. This is the switch manufactured. It's manufactured by Honeywell. Okay. If you increase the size of this, you can see how the grating is installed out there. Can you see that tooth? Because the lower end of that switch itself has a tooth kind of thing coming out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Next image. This is the schematic showing you how this switch is operated. Can you see it says 2.28 mm, so it has to be lifted and then it has to be put out, position changed. Can you see that dot 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 line in the from the center position up? Yeah. Don't move it. Just put. Don't move the whole thing. Just take your this thing mouse and put it on top of the solid switch.
Yeah, unfortunately, the image moves when I move my mouse. It's on
Okay.
WhatsApp.
Okay. So it has to be lifted, position switched. Next image. Yeah, this is the close up. You can see the tooth there, the tooth below and above. Okay. Now, next image. This is what I used to use on the Cessna. And here again, can you see the fuel shutoff is on the top right?
This one you're talking about, right?
Yeah, the
what
red
the
button.
one that says pull off.
Yeah. So when I was getting my pilot's license, this is the thing we used to use. See, it is marked very, very deliberately. You have to pull it out. So even on the, now go back to the very first photo. This one. See, for these switches to transition, first we know the software can't make it transition. It has to transition manually. It requires 5 separate deliberate actions. They are designed in a way that requires 5 separate deliberate actions. One is pull, push up, 3 release, 4 move to the next one, next switch, 5 lift up, 6 release.
Yeah, can I just ask a question over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, the way you are explaining this is quite a long-winded procedure. So, I mean,
Exactly.
happen in a fraction of a second.
No, it can happen in a fraction of a second. A trained pilot can do it in a fraction of a second. It isn't that much. So it is a 2.28 mm increase that has to happen. It's just tuck, 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 bus. It can happen in a fraction of a second. The issue is, it seems to have been written to suggest that the pilot deliberately did it. Now, let me give you the other side. What the report ignores is all the warnings that have come on about these switches. Because there are at least 2-3 separate articles which tell us that, go to the next image and the image after the next. Third image, next one. That this particular thing where the red arrow is, that metal gate to prevent accidental, was not installed in several aircraft, this particular aircraft being one of them. Right? The problem is, the report hasn't told us did this aircraft have or did not have this particular transitioning switch. The FAA in 2018, the Federal Aviation Authority in America, had issued a warning about this, saying that this switch is prone to disengagement. It was an advisory, it wasn't a mandatory check. So it also seems that the investigator has also ignored all those previous FAA warnings, and Boeing released a second warning on the same date that this report got released, mandating checks on the switches. So you can literally, the airport, the report is left to be interpreted any way you want. But mostly it seems to me that there has been an attempt to say that the pilots did it. And the fact that this particular part hadn't been installed, the gates on the part had not been installed in this aircraft, has not been brought in. In a 12-page report, if you're operational, there is only one 4-5-line paragraph that is operational. You're clearly trying to exonerate somebody or something. And I'll tell you why this is a problem. The ICAO mandates that the initial report, the preliminary report, come out within 30 days of a crash happening. There is no ICAO requirement on the final report ever coming out. So you look at the China Airlines crash in 2022. They came out with a preliminary report. The final report still hasn't come out. It will probably never come out because that was actually a case of pilot suicide. There was actually video from the cockpit which went viral on Weibo there. But China rejected the fact that it was a pilot suicide case. Of all, now assume it was a pilot suicide. What has happened so far is in the last 30 years, pilot suicides are not uncommon. They happen every 4 or 5 years. Taking the entire plane down with them. I'll send you a whole list of them, in fact. What ends up happening in these pilot suicide cases is invariably the country of the aircraft rejects the report and the final report gets buried somehow or the other and no corrective action ever gets taken. The only country that has ever accepted the report in its entirety has been the Germanwings crash in the Alps. Yes, sub, I will send it to you. You just look at the sheer number of cases in which this has happened. Let me just find you the list and send it to you. It is, you can put it up as a resource. But, yeah, where is this? 1 second. इसमें ये क्या है?
तूने मेरे को भेजा था पहले.
I'm sending it to you again on WhatsApp. This is the total list of flights where people have crashed themselves.
There are lots. China Air, Egypt Air, Germanwings.
Egypt Air, Germanwings, everything. Right. Now, problem here is you've not made anything clear. And if this was a case of the metal grate not being installed, then you've blamed the pilot. Now understand, previously also they blamed an Indian pilot for the Lion Air crash. That was also Boeing. Boeing there deliberately paid a dirty trick. Where is the apology to Captain Saluja, who they besmirched in the Lion Air crash? It was not his fault. It was a software fault. And there were death threats and things like that given to his family after he died. And Boeing knew and they allowed him. They actually financed the campaign to besmirch him. I'm not saying pilot suicide nahi hua. I am saying there are two possibilities that emerge from this report because of this damn useless investigator who needs to be sacked, who needs to be demoted and have his pension taken away, because this is exactly not how to write a report. And then, did you get all those foreign investigators to sign confidentiality agreements and find out where John Ostrover got his thing from? If not, you also deserve to be sacked. They had no business going about leaking it.
Yeah, it's disgusting. So, yeah, एक minute.
Okay,
Sanjay, what
now,
do you have to say?
I just want to add to what Abhijit said. The report refers in one para, in the opening paras, about the 2018 FAA directive, which Abhijit has spoken of, which I've sent you on WhatsApp. Red marking wala. Now, if you see there, it refers to almost 14 different types of aircraft. It came about with the 737, but if you enlarge it, you'll see it covers the 737, the 747, the 757. The table up will show you 767, 77, 777 is not there. The 787, all the series, the MD-10, the MD-12. It goes on to all these aircrafts. Now you go to the highlighted red portions, and it tells airlines to look in to their aircraft and see if any of these models of aircrafts they have in their fleet have this problem of disengaging automatically, which Abhijit referred to. And if so, kindly write to Boeing and let them know so that they can get the data. But this is not a mandatory check. It's a suggestion. It's not mandatory. Now you go to the other
Would
WhatsApp.
this be called an extra precautionary measure that is recommended
It's
but not
actually
mandatory?
SAIB. It's called SAIB. It's a safety bulletin, which is not mandatory in nature. They have two types of bulletins they come out with. One are the mandatory and one are the recommendatory. This is recommendatory in nature, so it's not compulsory. So whether airlines did it or not, we don't know. We don't even know about the amount of data that airlines sent back to Boeing, given that there are 1,175 Dreamliners, flying in the world. I don't know. At that time, there must have been much less, maybe a couple of hundred. But we go back to the other one I sent you on WhatsApp, which is the 2022, 2nd May 2022. Now, very strangely, this report does not refer to that. That was a WhatsApp text I sent you, not this.
Okay,
Not this.
okay,
WhatsApp
great.
text, Sotana. Now, that is if you can show a snapshot of that or whatever, that'll be great, because that follows the ANA incident. Now, ANA was also a 787 where the fuel shut off on ground. Okay. And, the same valves were involved. Now we go to that 2022 bulletin, which was mandatory. And that was in relation to the fire shut off. Now, the Abhijit sent the photograph. The fire shut off is just next to the engine fuel shut off valves. And it said there was, FOD, danger of FOD. FOD is listed in that. If you can you enlarge that, or बहुत छोटू
नहीं
है?
यार, ये enlarge नहीं होगा, unfortunately.
Okay, so essentially, I can read it from my phone. I don't have the text of that, but basically what it says is that because during the course of investigation of this fire, let me just read it. It says Boeing Alert Service Bulletin. Official title is Engine Fire Control Panel, Engine Fire Shutoff Switch, Inspection and Change. Now it's applicable to Boeing 787, 8, 9 and 10 models, and it directs operators to inspect the engine fire shutoff switch assembly, EFSS, for serial numbers. And then FAA reviews it and mandates a compulsory thing. Why? This bulletin was prompted by a report that indicated that foreign object debris, FOD, may have been introduced during maintenance or rework of certain EFSS units. The FOD risks include, and number one, uncommanded activation of the engine fuel shutoff valve. That is exactly what this report is talking about in this particular aircraft. So Boeing and FAA recognize that foreign object debris, FOD, could cause an uncommanded activation of the engine fuel shutoff. It also says inability to actuate the fire handle. And then it goes away. The key takeaways, if you look in the last line, the biggest, in effective 18th Jan 2023, the largest hazard, it says underlying hazard, FOD, leading to uncommanded shutdowns or failure of fire handles, and of course, obviously the engine shutoff. So these failures could lead to serious hazards, including uncontrolled fires, dual engine shutdown, or total thrust loss. What is our AAIB is not seen this? Ridiculous that you go back to 2018. So you've crafted a narrative to suit a particular group or a particular company or a particular agency, but you've not gone deep enough. And when you're doing this, you should have. Now we come to the other aspect, which is also what Abhijit referred to, which I referred to earlier. You will have the 787's ICAS blaring warnings. Now, number one, master warning, you would come on, the engine fail, the fuel pressure low, the rack deployed. So from 13, 38, 42, there will be clicks at the cutoffs, everything right up to the crash. Were these guys either, you know, deaf, or they just didn't want to share all this? Now, why doesn't the report mention the various oral warnings? I know the report doesn't have to give out the entire CVR at this stage, but it is, you know, it's desirable because you want to tell people what actually happened. There would have been a fuel control switch off. Now, when they're talking of a conversation between one pilot and the other, this is the basic they should have done, which they didn't do. We also then go to, Wall Street Journal talks about a potential disagreement between NTSB and AAIB. What was that disagreement? Why did the investigators leave early? John Ostrover has reported this, but not reported the alleged disagreement. Wall Street Journal has gone ahead further and said that. How did those guys get hold of all this data earlier? There's so many questions, and now in light of that, okay, immediately on the report, Boeing says there's no problem with anything. Then Etihad starts orders all, checks on all its 787s. Singapore Airlines has done it. Now, one by one, they're all asking for their carriers to do this. What's going on? So therefore, there was enough of doubt. I'm not saying pilots did it or didn't, exactly like Abhijit. When there is more data and the CVR is released, we can confirm. But let's go back to, there was enough of doubt over the mechanical and the electrical, and I'll come to the electronic part later, for them not to have put that line that there are no safety recommendations against Boeing or GE. Why give somebody a clean chit at the get-go? You've just started your innings and you're declaring it. I mean, how can you do this? This is what I find ridiculous. And going further, it also says, let's remember, both these pilots had 19,000 hours total experience. Okay. And almost 9,700 hours on the 787 alone. When somebody says, why did you cut off? And he says, I did not do so. There's confusion in the cockpit over fuel cutoff. Both pilots seem unaware. Should the report have not mentioned further what was happening, or whether this was in response to an oral warning or a master caution light coming on? We don't know. The other thing is the 1 second. Now, Abhijit said it's possible. I have seen a lot of people demonstrating on Twitter and stuff like that, videos. Even there, I see it takes a little more than a second. Remember, this was a guy who was sitting in the cockpit at takeoff point at 180 knots with significant G forces against him and leaning up to lift the spring-loaded 2.2 mm whatever rise. It would have been a little difficult at that, and to do it so silently and secretly. The warnings would have come on. So unless, like I've said earlier, AAIB and NTSB know something they've not disclosed to us, or trying to break this stuff gently, there's so much of gap here. The other point is, what if, now they use the word transition, and Abhijit rightly pointed out, it's not moved, the word is transition. Could it have been that the switch did not physically move? I'm surmising. Could it have been the fact that, maybe, now all these switches are mechanical switches, both these switches. They connect to an electronic system which shuts down the fuel to both the engines, right? Could it have been something, that was software related, technically related, or electronically related? We don't know. And there have been issues. Now, I got hold of a Boeing GE test lab result on the 787. And it talks, there's no certainty whether fuel control switches were moved to cutoff or not, or whether it was just the electric functions associated with the switch. Now, there have been reports of TCMA malfunction in the EEC. The EEC is the electronic control that looks after this. If that were the case, then the status automatically changes from ground to air and air to ground. And the Boeing lab notes are available only to GE and Boeing engineers. And this angle needs deeper investigation, which I don't see any mention of in the report. So they've actually really done a very rushed job, maybe to satisfy, political, or I don't want to say, corporate requirements or whatever. And they've left the sword hanging over the pilots' necks, both of them. Unfortunate, and in the final analysis, when the entire report is done, like Abhijit says, there is no time limit. It sometimes takes a year, sometimes a year and a half. I've seen reports that taken much more in India, more than a year and a half. So, and they've sought, extensions of time, etc. People will have forgotten. Then you put it on the pilot, who's not there to defend himself, or they are not there to defend themselves. It's in poor form, according to me. The other important thing is, remember, the committee did not have a single pilot when it started. In the last 2 days, I've seen an order of the appointments committee of the cabinet putting a squadron leader on that. They should have invited a type rated pilot. I have been telling people and tweeting to the pilots unions, it's time to move the court, ask for a judicial probe. In the Kanishka, we had a judicial probe. Of course, we didn't have the AAIB then, but in a judicial probe, full transparency is there. They can summon whichever expert they want to give testimony, and then you have a continue your AAIB process, because it's under ICAO 13 and it's under 9756, which is the document that deals with crash accident investigation. But instead of having a group of babus, which they've announced to look into this case, they could have had a sitting high court judge or a retired high court judge look into it, give him a 3-month tenure. In Kanishka, they had Justice B.N. Kirpal. He was a sitting judge of the High Court, later became Chief Justice of India. His report till today is the benchmark. And it's changed ICAO rules all over the world for transit baggage and aircrafts, etc. Look at his report. It speaks specifically. It even says the Canadian authorities did not want to talk about the bomb. That it's so detailed. Because when you have a judge, you're not only above board, you're seen to be above board, and there is so much more. He has the power to summon witnesses, to summon evidence, to ensure transparency. This is all cloak and dagger stuff. That's my 2 pence. Yeah.
Abhijit.
I agree with Sanjay on this. First of all, what appalls me is everybody is going after Boeing. Okay. Nobody is going after the minister. What is the minister doing? He needs to say that this is an unsatisfactory. Coming out and saying I stand by the pilots is not good enough, bro. You need to come out and say this is a shit report. You need to dock this, whoever idiot wrote this report, you need to dock his salary and dock his pension. And you need to start a inquiry against this fellow, whoever it was that wrote it. And you need to now order a judicial probe into how this report was written, how it was leaked, bring about charges against those who were leaked and seek extradition orders. And then go. Now, see, I completely agree that a preliminary report tells you what and not why. The problem is it doesn't even properly tell you what happened. Fine, the why will take time to come out. I agree with that. But what happened, wo to likho. Produce the entire cockpit voice recorder. Produce the entire list of this thing. You've gone into so much blathering bullshit in the first 11 pages. You didn't have time to put all the operational detail.
Abhijit, I have a question. Why only one line was released?
We don't know. And even in that line, the tonality of the line, see, I can basically, it could have been said in any way. It could have been said, did you turn it off? Did you turn it off? We don't know. Was it accusatory? Was it inquiry? Was it... we don't know. We don't know the tonality of it. My worry now is, because they're saying the flight data recorder has to be sent abroad for investigation, the way this has been leaked, there is a high chance the data will be corrupted if it's sent abroad. There are some very specific questions. Everyone watching this needs to tag the PMO, tag the minister, and ask him, A, what is the action being taken against people who write a shoddy report like this? 2, where the foreign investigators made to sign confidentiality agreements? If not, who is being held responsible for this? Okay. 3rd, Why aren't you ordering a judicial inquiry given that the report is so unsatisfactory? I am not going to be a nationalist in this and say, oh, it's entirely Boeing's fault, the pilots are faultless. It is quite possible the pilots committed suicide or pilot, whatever. Unfortunately, there is nothing in the report to show it either way. It is a disservice to the pilot, it is a disservice to Boeing also. And Boeing hasn't played clean in this. Let's be clear. I am seeing all the footprints of what happened with the Lion Air flight, the 737 MAX, of Boeing's dirty games at play. And therefore, to me, precisely because of the dirty games, I'm quite suspicious of Boeing right now.
Now, but what do you make? Barkha had also shared this UK regulator issuing a mandatory directive quoting the FAA, American aviation regulator, citing a quote potential unsafe condition affecting fuel shutoff valves. Barkha has
Yes.
shared this image.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it up for everyone to see. Like I'm just sharing this. Barkha had reported this. So this is the civil aviation safety notice, very clearly mentioning these these airlines, and this is the next page of it.
पहले
So
वो पेज डालो जिसमें हाईलाइट है, वो जूम करके डालो.
zoom तो यार नहीं होगा या unfortunately I don't
उनको
have
zoom
an
करना.
I can't see the date, but this seems to be after the
Date is
ANA.
15 May
15th May
2025.
2025, Abhijit.
So this is 15th May. So this is the report that came out on the day we put out our report.
No, 15 May.
May.
Oh,
May
May.
means before the it's before the crash.
यार ये थोड़ा जूम नहीं हो सकता है क्या ये?
नहीं यार, I'm sorry. मैं तेरे को WhatsApp पे इमेज कॉपी करके भेज रहा हूँ अभिजीत.
हाँ,
Just
please.
give me a moment, please.
Now,
भेज दिया.
And what Barkha has shared, sorry, is I mean, look at this, Kushal. This is almost a month before our aircraft went down.
Hmm.
Okay, our aircraft went down in June. This is May, and it talks of the same thing. This is exactly my point. There were enough of instances, worries, and documents that said that this could happen. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it did happen. Remember that. I'm saying it could happen. And in a court of law, being a lawyer, my mind just goes back to legal stuff. Is that if something could happen, then you cannot conclusively absolve. There's an element of doubt. So how do I absolve Boeing and GE? Honeywell was not even mentioned here, though Honeywell is the manufacturer of the part. How do you absolve them? The AAIB should have kept quiet. And Abhijit is absolutely right. I pointed it out in my tweets and in my article. The minister, I mean, it's for the first time, the minister suddenly came running the next evening because he did not expect the groundswell of anguish and irate people on social media and the passengers and travelers and aviators in India who would scream up at this report. And not only one, in fact, I saw videos of both the ministers. Uh, the cabinet, the minister of state, as well as the minister himself talking. We are with cabin crew, and the actual report will come out finally, and then we'll see what happened, because they realized that this was a big goof up. They have played into US corporate hands over here. Let's be very blunt. I don't know what quid pro quo, if there is. They've given us reason to say that. I'm not typically a conspiracy theorist normally, and I like Abhijit also and you. I frequently attack our own government, whether I'm a supporter of the party or the government. It does not matter. When something is right, it's right. When something is wrong, is wrong. And this report is clearly the handiwork of people who are really not qualified to do this job, or rather, they've not taken people who were qualified to do this job. They've sought to hang it on two pilots who were, dead men tell no tales, and by insinuation and allegation and uh, basically just pointing the finger of doubt or suspicion to the pilots, you have created this circumstance and this aura of pilot suicide, German wings kind of incident, when in fact the circumstances before you don't say that. The report should have been fairer, it should have been clearer, and maybe if there wasn't somebody's pressure on it, this could have been quite different, I believe. That's why I'm completely of the view that a judicial inquiry is essential, whether it's ordered by the prime minister, or whether it's a public interest litigation by travelers bodies and pilots bodies. I've also offered to join it, free of cost, because I would like to get this clear. Let's have a system in place where we cannot have this skullduggery going on between the DGCA, the ministries, big corporate houses. You can't do that. It's absolutely not done. And in all this, then suddenly you see this CAA directive. CAA is, of course, Civil Aviation Authority of the United Kingdom, and it talks of the same switches. You see the 2018 directive, or the circular reproduced by the AAIB. Then you hear of the 2022 document. Then you hear of the ANA case. There have been more than one instance of this case, and you need to look deeper. I mean, in the end, if everything is clear, technically, electronically, electrically, and physically, and all the data points to a pilot suicide, or a deliberate or intentional event by the pilot. I mean, it could be intentional in an effort to save the plane. Remember also that the 787 QRH and the pilot manual itself says, in case of a dual engine failure, you will recycle these switches. So it's not as though they did not do something that was not in the manual. If it was done, it was following the manual. So there was too much of uncertainty, and I still feel that they've left it very murky, and it's going to hurt passengers' families, crew families, pilots' families, and travelers and aviators in India, because it's the shoddiest report I've seen. And mind you, it's not the first crash I've seen. I was around when Kanishka took place. I may have been a young guy then. I've been almost first on the site of both Air India Express crashes. I have helped where our crew members have been injured or died in accidents in Japan as well as other places. So it's not that I've not handled these kind of things. So I'm aware of how reports are done. I have seen how aviation is handled at these critical junctures. I don't believe that they've done justice in this particular case, and I think lots of lots is left to be decided here.
So one more very interesting thing is, Barkha has shared this too. This is the global pilots on Air India 171 preliminary report. They say, quote, stop guesswork, speculation, and hasty conclusions. Quote, preliminary report by its very nature raises many questions. It does not provide answers, warns against extrapolation. So clearly the Pilots Association is not very happy about whatever is happening. What I'm not able to understand is, Abhijit, why aren't the Pilots Association and the families dragging these people to court? Like, I'm not able to understand that bit.
See, the issue becomes pilots associations have employers. Pilots don't run their own airlines. There are consequences, because if you look at it, it also seems to be done to exonerate Air India in a way. Okay, now imagine the pilots had done this. Let's assume it was a suicide by pilot. The technical term is suicide by pilot. It's actually so common that it's got a technical term, suicide by pilot. Assume it was suicide by pilot. Okay. Which then raises the questions where mental health checkups done. What was the mental health status of these pilots? Was there somebody in the jump seat? Because I'm told there was somebody in the jump seat. If not, what were you doing? Okay, now you tell me which pilot is going to get a reputation for going against an airline. Second, there is an element, the families can't clamor for it, because the families, the pale of suspicion is when it's cast on the pilot. The families better stay out of the limelight, because you never know. You remember there is that case of the mid-air collision over Switzerland, where the German guy found the air traffic controller and shot him dead 2-3 years later. Imagine the trauma the families of the pilots are going through at the moment. वो तो बोलेंगे नहीं. They don't have the agency to speak either. And where are the pilots going to say all of this?
Uh,
It's really up to us to start talking about this. I think everybody, tweeting doesn't help. You need to get the minister's thing and ask him some very hard questions about his own conduct in this entire thing.
yeah, that the bloody media should be hammering the minister. Just shove a mic up his face, yeah.
Have you noticed they have not said a word?
They have not said a word. कोई
No
रिपोर्टर
channel
नहीं
has said a
भेजेगा
word.
इसको इंटरव्यू करने के लिए.
क्या कर रही है यार media? What the hell is the media doing? They should be shoving a mic up his face. Like, bolo, tell us.
Now, assume it was suicide by pilot. You are doing everybody a disservice by seeing to it that the Air India isn't hauled over the coals. Because if this all happened once, it can happen again. And nobody talks about this. Why is it we've had so many pilot suicides with no rectification action by the NTSB, by FAA, by anyone? To this day, there is, even after the German wings crash, where the co-pilot was locked out after he went to the toilet, you have the dichotomy of having a strengthened door post 911, which cannot be broken open, and the cabin crew, which has to block the front entrance with a trolley every time the pilot goes to the loo, which means one person is left alone in the cockpit. There is still no solution to this. Even after MH17 going missing, which was most probably a pilot deliberate action, you still have the case where pilots are allowed to be free in the be alone in the cockpit. You have a case where there is absolutely no video recording of the cockpit, even though now you have the ability to stream video full. The pilot still has the ability to turn off the transponder. How the hell can you allow a transponder to be turned off on a commercial flight? Why can't you have video recording of the cockpit today? घर का security camera कितना पैसा लगता है भाई? You can get one for 5,000 rupees. Do you know, Kushal, even with 30-year-old radar technology today, the kind of flight commands that have to be given verbally, you can bypass it completely and do a completely electronic takeoff landing sequence and things like that. There are lots of things here that are kept deliberately analog, deliberately confusing, deliberately what and what not. I'm sorry, but I have no faith in the civil aviation minister right now.
It's very disappointing. And I just feel terrible for the families also. Yeah, I mean, they have lost their near and dear ones, and they, at the, the worst thing is people not getting closure. Like, imagine, in Sanjay's case, it's been 40 years with the Kanishka bombing. He doesn't get justice. Now you look at these families, nobody gets justice. Like, what the
In,
hell?
in
And there
civil
are
aviation,
so many rumors floating. Yeah,
civil
there are.
aviation, it is extremely rare for anyone to get justice. The Lion Air and the Ethiopian Air people got justice because the entire cover up was blown to smithereens. Otherwise, most people collude. Right now, if you think Trump is going to allow anything to happen to Boeing and American jobs, forget about it.
So basically, this is also going to be buried.
But what is our government doing? That is my issue.
Why is our government doing this? Yeah, we have to ask questions.
Is it being done to protect Air India?
Oh my god.
I just want to point out, Abhijit said something about pilots going to toilets and stuff like that. In Air India, there's been an SOP from the days I was flying. I mean, it came in about 10 years or maybe 15 years ago, that one cabin crew has to go inside and sit down when the pilot goes. But that's one part. The other part is that in the independence of this AAIB, we all know how independent our organizations in India are. Obviously the aviation ministry and MOCA and everybody had pervasive influence and were probably getting up to date information. We also know that there was a parliamentary committee that asked for an update and they got an update in between. uh, there's so much that is hidden from all of us, and because we've not seen reporting or reportage of the type of the olden days Dominic Gates. Now Abhijit mentioned Lion Air and these German wings and Egypt Air coming to. Had it not been for Dominic's investigative reporting for the Seattle Times, we may never have seen the Boeing MCAS gobbledygook ever exposed. And that's how it really got exposed. Over here too, I think what we need is some guys to really do deep dives. But from what I've been reading online, it seems there are two groups of journalists. One who's convinced that the report is BS and we need to look elsewhere, and another group that says no, this is definitely questionable and could be deliberate or intentional by the pilot. uh, Unfortunately, no one is digging deep enough to go into the questions that are unanswered here, and we're all saying let's wait for the final report. In that sense, we are never going to get justice. We are never going to get answers. In some way, Kushal is right. I'm waiting 40 years for justice. But what happened in my case was that I had a great judge. Justice Kirpal promised the government he would deliver in within 10 months. He delivered a final report within 6 months. June, the crash took place. Before December, he had it ready. He had sent it to the governor, to the government, and it was, based on that then the Canadian authorities, etc., took it up. We've not seen such alacrity in the other tragedies that we've had in India, and I have no reason to believe that we're going to see it in this case either. Because remember, in those days, we were in the public sector. Now we are in the airline is in the private sector. So there's a lot more guarded information that is uh, you know preserved over there, and we need to find a way to inquire, like he says, how did the report leak in the US, or how did the critical parts of the report start circulating in the United States. See, this is nothing against either the Wall Street Journal or John Ostrower or the Air Channel. They're journalists. They will do their job like you're doing your job, Kushal, today, or Abhijit, who does his job tomorrow. You're getting scoops, you're going to print it, you're going to publish it. Point is that where was the NDA? Did somebody sign an NDA when they joined this? If they had, where is the confidentiality? Where is the integrity? Or was it leaked to protect jobs? Like he rightly said. Imagine if this. I'm just think for a minute that this was a Boeing fault. It would have crippled the company. 1100 jahaj बैठ जाते थे. I mean, overnight. Even today, you're seeing a number of Asian, Middle Eastern, and Southeast Asian airlines now telling their people, let's stop the aircraft and let's have a check on this part. Okay. I've had pilot associations from other countries talk to me, and they're friends of mine, and they're saying, the other thing they're questioning, why was there no third pilot? There should have been, a 3-pilot operation, being 9 hours plus. The other thing they're saying is that how did, these checks not be completed, or were they completed? Now, in defense of Air India, and I'll say this, it's been reported in the report that the quadrant, the throttle quadrant, which contains the 2 throttles plus these 2 switches, was replaced in 2019 and 2023, but not for complaint of these switches. It was just replaced. Now, whether the replaced part was in compliance with what the 2018 circular said or not, we don't know. We also don't know, whether, like I said, there was some electronic malfunction, which also needs, looking into whether we had the EEC or TCMA malfunction. That's what's going to, give the answers here. And there's a lot of work that's required, because of the reaction of the public, traveling public and the aviation public in India to the preliminary report. I can see that this committee is going to have a hell of a time delivering what is conclusive proof, unless they come out with something that says, oh, there was a maramari on board or there was argument. You see, after that statement, I'm assuming there could have been an argument. There could have been, a guy saying, "Oh God, how did this happen, sir?" Or "What happened?" Or "What are these alarms blaring?" Because before he said that, there should have been three alarms blaring, at least two or three huge alarms, wah, 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 like big bhopus. You see those tempos having those bhopus in Bombay all around the place, or in Delhi. It's like that. Crazy. We've not heard anything of this. So these are steps, I think, that, and the government has, I think, pretty much failed. The ministry has pretty much failed here to allay fears of people. We've seen huge cancellations in international flying, on people who are flying on the 787, not only on the national carrier, but on other carriers as well. Flying has suddenly dropped because people are now worried. Fares have dropped by 30%. Look at the current fare. 4 months ago, I could get, I was getting Toronto at 89,000 rupees. Today it's at 50,000 rupees. That shows you that there is a fear psychosis that is set into the traveler, because we have mishandled this entire accident. Should have been handled better. As far as concerns over pilot welfare and passenger welfare and crew members welfare, I think both the DGCA and the government need to think of instituting long-term plans within the framework of the DGCA car, to ensure that there is mandatory training or mandatory counseling given on a recurrent basis, not when you think something has happened, because you don't really know if somebody could be depressed about something outside of the workspace. And most often we get upset or depressed about something outside. I lost 2 crores in the share market. My lover left me and went. Or, this could be anything. I'm just shooting in the dark. It upsets you mentally. It would upset you and me. We need to have that kind of institutionalized assistance. I won't call it treatment, but it's assistance. It's just a counseling session, so that people retain their balance of mind. Yeah.
Abhijit?
I have nothing to add on this. I think I'm going to write a letter to the Minister of Civil Aviation. I'll put it up on Twitter. I want every one of you to cut, copy, paste, and send that email. Unless there is public pressure on the minister. See, you have to nail the minister on this.
Please copy the Prime Minister in it.
Yeah. Till he realizes that a formal letter has been sent, a future inquiry will not hold him responsible for the crimes of omission that have happened in a body report, which technically he is meant to be supervising. The command responsibility as per the Nuremberg laws lies with him.
I'll join you.
No, so will I, of course, 100%. 100%. Because, at the end of the day, like I said, the onus has been left on 2 brave men who died in that cockpit on that day, whose lives will be scrutinized, their families will be scrutinized in every way possible. And the narrative will be set in such a way so as to find them responsible. Dead men, tell no tales. And this is something that we need to protect. And we also need to we are now going to be the 3rd largest aviation market in the world. We are the 4th largest economy in the world. We're going to have 2,000 plus aircrafts. We're going to have 250 plus airports. We cannot be, a banana republic as far as investigations and accidents go. We have trained pilot investigators who have completed courses under the Civil Aviation Ministry and ICAO guidelines. Not one of them was called. Instead, you had a knee-jerk reaction where you appointed a group of bureaucrats. What would the bureaucrats, I understand, with great regard to bureaucrats, they run our country perfectly in their own way. But this is something so highly technical. We need to have judicial transparency, a judicial probe. We need to have accountability here for sure. And I think I back Abhijit 100%. Let's all demand for a judicial probe and transparency in this investigation. This is the time we have to take our stand.
It's crazy. The tragedy is whether, we don't know whether the investigator got rich. We don't know what Babu has done. What? No, I'm being very straight up.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's something that it's not out of the realm of thinking.
Yeah, babus are doing what babus do best
Mm.
in India. Bullshit their way to glory. What is it? Is it sabotage? Is it a technical failure? It is, or is it a legitimate case of pilot suicide? Murder by pilot suicide, or whatever technical term you want to call it. The point is, people deserve the truth. you know not just the two poor pilots and their families. Yeah, so many people lost their lives. Those people were just flying as customers. Their families need
What about
to.
the kids on the ground? The kids in the college who
Yeah.
died. Imagine them.
So, I mean, what the hell are we talking about? I just like, yeah. Anyways, is there anything else we want to say, or can we wrap it up, both of you?
No, thank you
Great.
very much. I just want
Yeah.
this. I'm going to reach out to people like Abhijit will, writing letters. I say judicial inquiry. Let's have transparency and accountability,
Yeah,
and
great.
let's not harm the pilots for something they may not have done. Let's be clear before we insinuate.
Yeah.
Yes. True. I agree with you. Abhijit, तू जब भी letter बनाएगा मेरे को बताना. I'll also join in, and we'll try to put as much pressure as we can through our sources. I just think, as citizens of the country, everybody deserves the truth. It's just abysmal. And Sanjay is right. Like, look at the larger picture, boss. You are one of the you're the fastest growing economy in the world. You have to, you have to increase the amount of trust people have in India and the Indian system. Like, what are these people doing? Like, crazy jackasses. Anyways, we'll wrap it up, guys, over here. Once again, thank you to both of you for joining in,
Thank you.
and to everyone. Uh, just just keep following Abhijit, Sanjay. All the details are going to be there in the description of the podcast. Like Abhijit said, if and when we write a letter, I think all of you should join in and write this letter, and keep tagging the Prime Minister, and keep demanding this. Until you don't do that in India, nothing moves. So I hope you guys do that needful. Anyways, all of you, please take care. Have a great time. Bye.